There you go. I'm here. I'm back. And I am so excited to be back from Grand Prairie. It was minus 39. That's cold, but it's not as cold as it feels here on Vancouver Island now because we have 100% humidity. So today I got my jacket on. Even outside, I was freezing. My puppy loves it, loves it, loves it. So today, I just wanted to thank Grand Prairie. That was fantastic. I hope some of you come on and listen to me live. It was really fun to be there. And if you do come on today, say hi and tell me you're from Grand Prairie. I also want to tell you I'm heading down to Victoria next weekend. So that's a talk I should be working on. I shouldn't be sitting here talking to you, perhaps. I should be doing that. But there you go. That's what I'm up to. One of the things we did in Grand Prairie is we learned how to save seeds. If you still have tomatoes in your freezer, maybe you didn't know this, you can use those tomatoes by taking them out of the freezer, letting them defrost, and then smearing them onto paper towel. So everyone took their own share of sunrise bumblebee seeds home from Grand Prairie so that they can try them. This is a really amazing tall tomato that can grow up very indeterminate. That's the term we use when they just keep growing. And they get red fruits, not the smallest cherries, but they're maybe about an inch across. And they have yellow fruits, I guess, with red stripes. So that's really fun. Really good. So we are saving because these are what's called an open pollinated. That was a new word, I realized. I didn't realize that. It was a new word. And we talked about that in Grand Prairie. Open pollinated means that the fruit or the flowers and the plants can just cross with anything and it won't matter because they've been out there for years. And when you collect up those fruits, they're going to come fairly true. So they sort of are, well, self-pollinated, open pollinated, something that you can save in your own garden. And those are the kinds of seeds that we like to talk about with Seedy Saturdays. So if you want to grow an open pollinated tomato, try Sunrise Bumblebee. It's really cute. And if you don't have anything already purchased in terms of tomatoes, go into your freezer and grab those out. So today our idea, oh, there's Kristen right now. Hi, Kristen. Our idea today came from Kristen. She posted this morning early on Twitter. I can't believe how you dig these things up, Kristen, and I had to steal this idea because this has had huge impact on my family. Kristen posted from the Garden Diaries, a blog. I guess that's just written by the Garden Diaries. I'm sorry, I don't even see who the author is there. But she posted, are coffee grounds good for your garden? And if you've used coffee grounds in your garden, let me know what you think. I've had a few experiences myself. I'll tell you one thing. I used to, when I was younger, I would take my coffee cup in the morning. When I was finished it, I would just throw it outside. When I rinsed out my coffee pot, this is off my balcony in my apartment, I would throw it onto the lawn, and the lawn looked okay. But apparently, according to this article, and we're going to get more into that, coffee grounds are bad for lots of different plants. So anyway, welcome. Oh, Nancy's here too. It's still icy, she said. Didn't stay out too long today. Minus 34. And Nancy's from Medicine Hat. So if it's minus 34 in Medicine Hat, it's cold on the prairies. So let us know. And it's cold here on Vancouver Island as well. So that was very fun. Oh, Claire Jones. Thanks, Kristen. So the Garden Diaries is a blog written by Claire Jones, and she could tell that I couldn't read it that quickly. So some of the advice, so we can get back to that actually, some of the advice that's written about coffee grounds, and people talk about them as if they're just like God sent. And this article is really well researched and really good. Claire says to us that coffee grounds do provide phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, and copper. And copper is a funny little thing. It's hard to get in your garden, and you just need a tiny amount of it. So it's interesting that coffee grounds provide that. However, many plants, the ones they tested, the broccoli, the leek, the radish, the viola, and the sunflowers all suffered. And in a lot of cases, they said that within about 2 weeks of application of coffee grounds, the plants were, well, if not dead, they had yellowing leaves, they were defoliated, they weren't good. So if you were thinking when you make your morning coffee, I'm just going to pour it onto my house plants, you might want to think again. The final solution, I think, and Claire comes up with two ideas, but her final solution was either just put it on plants that like acidity. And then she realizes that's not so good because different kinds of coffee are acid and some are more alkaline. So that's not always a good thing. So in the end, it comes down to what we always come down to when we're making additions to our garden, whether it's ash from your fireplace. And with it being so cold, people are going to be asking this question again. So if it's ash from your fireplace or coffee from your morning coffee ritual, don't add it directly to your garden. Do not do that. Instead, take the coffee grinds, take the ash from your fireplace, put it into your compost pile. That way there's a process. All of the microbes in there go through it, they work with it, they change it, and eventually by the time it's available to your plants, it's okay. So add your coffee grinds to your compost pile, not directly to your garden. Got it? Lots of time till we garden again anyways, but I think that people want to know that. Some people I know, like Alan, does add them to his compost, and he's been keeping his compost over 100 all winter. That's Fahrenheit because we can't seem to find the right. Now, if anyone has a source for a thermometer that is in Celsius, I would love to get one. But meanwhile, I'm using my Lee Valley Tools one, and I'm sure most people are because that's the only one we can seem to find for our compost piles. If you've got a source of a Celsius compost thermometer, I would love to know it. So Alan's been keeping his temperatures over 100 by putting coffee grinds in because there's so much nitrogen that feeds the microbes. So apparently it kills the plants in your garden, according to Claire Danes, but it doesn't kill your compost. So if you've got compost, add your coffee grinds there. Okay. Oh, Nancy says she has collected hers from the nearby. She's been collecting coffee grinds, and a lot of people are doing this. They're getting them from their local coffee shops, and then they put them out in the garden. And as Nancy says, that was before spring happened. So she was collecting coffee grinds, and I wonder how that works. She didn't get too many veggies last spring, so that's probably what happened. It's kind of funny because I know this, but I haven't been talking about it because, hey, you can't mention everything. I will say to you, if you're raising worms, Claire doesn't touch on this in her article, Garden Diaries, but if you are raising worms and you think, maybe I should add coffee grinds to my worms. I've heard they're good in the compost, so therefore they're probably good in the worm compost, but don't add coffee grinds to your worm bin. My daughter did this. She inherited my worms. So I had them in the can of worms, and when I moved, I gave her the whole family of worms, and she loved them. They were doing well. They were thriving. And then she read online, which is where we read some of these things, that coffee grounds were good for worms. The truth is, no, coffee grounds are not good for worms. Coffee grounds, actually, the one addition that she made, which is, maybe it was the Starbucks coffee, I don't know, but she got the grounds, had maybe a half a plastic bag full, dumped them on, and as she said, the next morning, all of her worms were committing suicide. They had gotten out of the bin, and they were all on the floor, crawling away from the bin. So be careful with coffee grinds. That's powerful stuff there. Thanks for telling us, Kristen, about this article. I was really excited to read it and to add that little bit of extra about just a little bit extra. So this morning in my diary, because I really want people to keep track and to write something down every day, and it's just a little bit. If you write for 3 years, you'll be able to compare and contrast. So just today, which is the 11th of February, I wrote down heavy snow, which my dog loves. You can see her online. I have already planted my peas that I'm taking down to Victoria. And I did that just before I left. I like to grow microgreens, and I thought I'll grow some microgreens to bring to Victoria to CD Saturday so that people can taste them. So if you're coming to CD Saturday in Victoria, you can come and taste my microgreens. Today, they were well up. They were about half an inch up. So I have actually taken a picture of them this morning when I uncovered them, took a picture this afternoon, and I'm going to take another picture tomorrow morning. You will not believe, once they start to come up, how fast they grow. So these will be big and edible by the weekend. It's hard to believe. So that's what I did this morning. I uncovered my microgreens And in really big news, my North Star and my shallots, my conservor shallots, have both started emerging. Now, North Star onions, conservor shallots are a type of shallot, and they're started very early. If you don't start them early, you just won't have a big enough plant come spring unless you go for bulbs, which is also a possibility. But I love starting seeds, and in February, the best things to start are artichokes and lobelia and North Star onions. So that's what I've got growing, and that's what I wrote in my journal this morning. So Nancy, she wonders if I drove to Grand Prairie. I did not drive to Grand Prairie. Grand Prairie is probably about a 20-hour drive, and I only went for a one-day talk. So I flew to Grand Prairie. Not driving to Grand Prairie this time of year, especially not after my husband had that accident on the Coquihalla last year. So tell me what you're up to in your garden. What have you been doing? What are you up to? One thing that I love to do, and I already talked about tomatoes, if you've got some in your freezer, you can take them out, you can let them thaw, you can squish them onto a piece of paper towel, and you can save those. Once they've dried, you can just pick off the individual ones. Always make sure to write the name on there. Look at that, I didn't even write that. These are Sunrise Bumblebee, but always make sure to write the name on the piece of paper towel so that you don't forget what it is, because those tomatoes do all tend to look the same once they are out of the freezer. When they're still in the freezer, you can still see their color, you can still see the shape, you can still separate out. Which ones did I forget to save last year? Because I thought I had saved some of these seeds, but in this collection that is my office, I did not find them. So I went back to the freezer and got some more. Ooh, Kristen's got some things germinating in the kitchen. Onions are also her first. And I wonder what kind of onions is Kristen growing? Because Kristen's a well-known vegetable gardener and a speaker. So I would love to know what kind of onions you are growing. Now, I also am growing Tandoori or Tandora leeks. But I'm just going to write that down to Kristen. What kind of onions are you growing? Be really fun to just do a little comparison here. We did that with tomatoes. A lot of people told us what they were growing with tomatoes. Ooh, where are my tomatoes? Here they are. Here's my whole collection. So tomatoes usually only take maybe 6 weeks. You only have to start your tomatoes 6 weeks before you put them out. And this is way ahead of that. This is way beyond 6 weeks. But I'm going to be planting in a greenhouse. So I'm starting them now so that in about a month from now, I can plant them in my greenhouse. And I did this last year and it worked really good. I ordered some special varieties this year that are just for the greenhouse. And that's where they are here. I've got Johnny's Big Dina. And that's a new one for me. That's a special greenhouse variety. All of these, by the way, are staking greenhouse varieties. This is Torangina, which is something I've never grown before. I don't know if that's in focus. So I've got that for my greenhouse, and I've got Edox. And those are my greenhouse tomatoes that I got from Johnny's. The ones that I've got that are not for the greenhouse, this is my little piece of paper towel from Al. These are Claire's tomatoes. These are the long ripening ones. They're like kind of like the mystery keepers. They're yellow. They never really turn a nice red color, but they're really great for storing into January and February. And Al's still eating some, so I'm going to try those. And of course, I always grow Juliets. I love Juliets. They're so sweet. And they're actually got paste tomato, and they last for me to almost the end of January. I'm also growing Red Robin cherry tomatoes because I have a little container area where I want to plant some, and Tiny Tims because this is the year I'm going to once and for all say, do I like the Red Robins better or the Tiny Tims? They're both tiny bushes loaded with little cherry tomatoes. So I know a lot of people have favorites. So let me know what your favorites are. I finally got told of the sun. I got tired of Sun Gold. So one of you, I can't remember who, suggested Sun Sugar. So I ordered those to be my replacement for Sun Gold because although I love Sun Gold, they get cracked all the time. So these are some of the things, and look what else I've done. I've already written out my stakes. I don't want to look too organized. I'm not. I took a full day off yesterday, did nothing but just plant stuff. It was so much fun. But I've already made my stakes, and I've already made a sticky, so I will remember to start these on February 13th. So normally my start day is mid-March. So if you're living in Grand Prairie or Edmonton or even Calgary, the best day to start outdoor tomatoes really is later. And the reason is they'll just get too big. It takes them quite a while to just germinate and be small. And then once they've doubled in size, they'll double again and they'll just get too big for your grow lights. So if you're starting for outdoor planting on the prairies anywhere, don't do that yet. But if you're starting for greenhouse planting and you've got a greenhouse, start them indoors. It's still too cold in most people's greenhouses. I know I just posted some pictures of my frost on my greenhouse windows. It's cold, but I don't want to heat my greenhouse yet. I've got some heat in there, just the heat that's starting my raspberry cuttings, but I don't want to fully heat the greenhouse. So I am actually starting those tomatoes indoors under my grow lights. So that's what we're up to. So Kristen, I wonder what Kristen has written to me. Oh, lots of memos. So Kristen also has her seeds germinating and her onions are the first to come up. Knocking snow off shrubs and trees this morning as it's snowing here again. Oh, Kristen had her rosemary break 2 years and from snow damage. She's growing Walla Walla onions. I don't have my catalog in front of me, but I know that Walla Walla are the super sweet, super big onions. And I'm not growing those. I'm growing the long storing onions, and the North Star are a smaller, and the Newburgh. I actually got the Newburgh from the CD Saturday in Qualicum Beach from a grower on Gabriola Island. And they are also a yellow. I looked at them. They're a yellow. They're not huge. And neither are the North Stars, but they're yellow. So I'm going to compare them side by side. They've both been started on the same day. The Walla Wallas are quite big and very sweet, but can take sometimes almost a year. They'll take almost the full year to grow. So we're starting my Newburghs and my North Stars, and they are underway. Now, Kristen brings up a good point, though. Whenever evergreens need pruning, they can be pruned all year round, even if it's cold out. Now, if it's so cold that it's too cold for you to prune, don't do it. But if it's -5, -10, go ahead, get out there and do it. And evergreens just don't have a big reaction to that. They're fine to be pruned at any time of the year. So people do ask that question quite a bit. They just are forgetting to ask it now because they're sitting indoors, freezing to death. What did Nancy say? Did she say it was 34, -34 in Medicine Hat? That is incredibly cold for Medicine Hat. So let me know what else you're up to. Let me know what you're doing, because it's Monday and we're doing Facebook Live. And we usually start at about 3 or 4, depending on where you're living, 5 if you're further east. And I like to stay on until I think we've had all the questions that we're going to have. So I never know quite when that point's going to come. But sometimes it's just after the 15-minute mark. So then people can start to roll with those questions. So those are my tomatoes. I almost left this one out. So thanking to Healthy Village Wellness in Grand Prairie. And you'll see I've posted some of the slides. We did a lot of hands-on activities this weekend and we had a lot of fun. And hello to Victoria. I will also mention, because I've got this new copy hot off the press, that Gardening with Emma has just come out. Emma, if you don't recognize her name, her last name is Biggs, and her dad is my co-writer on the No Guff vegetable gardening. So this is Stephen's book with me. And since we started the book, I'll show you a picture of Emma when she was very young. Since we started this book, kids just keep aging. There's a little picture of Emma, and that's how Emma looked. And she was very involved in Dad's garden. And if you haven't seen No Guff vegetable garden, it's really great. And there's been a really good review just come out from Chris. So I thank Chris for that. She has posted that and I shared it on this page. But Emma's book has just come out, and Stephen, of course, has helped her with it. You can see right here, Stephen Biggs. Not that I can point, my hand wants to go that way, but it's this way. So Emma Biggs and Stephen Biggs. This is a book actually that has come out from Story Press. Story is a very good publisher. And Gardening with Emma is all about how to grow and have fun. and Emma is 13. So if you are thinking about growing or getting your kids involved in growing, this is the book for you. I'm definitely going to review this book, and it's not that this book will turn your child into a garden writer, but we're hoping, just look at some of these pictures, we are hoping that your children will be inspired, because both Steve and I really believe in this. We've both had our children grow up in the gardens, and they're all gardeners. So that's really exciting. We put some pictures of bugs in there. I just noticed that. Worms, and of course the little ladybugs and the aphid midges. So these are all pictures, of course, that we had in No Guff Vegetable Gardening as well. Not these exact images, but we shared that with you. And I'm really excited about that book. So I think I'm going to do a full review on that. So you're going to see more of this online, perhaps, maybe even on my blog. I had such good response to my last newsletter. So if you haven't seen it, shoot me an email or sign up for my newsletters, because all you have to do is go to donnabalzer.com. That'll connect you. And some days I think, oh, I'm just standing here talking to myself. But this weekend, I couldn't believe it, in Grand Prairie, a lady that had just immigrated a week earlier from Holland was at my talk in Grand Prairie because she had seen me on YouTube. Go figure. I had no idea that any of that would be watched at any time. Oh, Kristen's also got a journal. And looking back on her journal, she says, I started tomato seeds in the greenhouse on March 7th, which is a bit late for me. So March 7th is late for greenhouse tomatoes, and I said that too, and that's why I'm getting mine going today, actually. And Kristen's wondering if I grow mainly hybrid tomatoes. I love hybrids because hybrids are including all of the new genetics that has come out of the more recent forays into Peru and Mexico. The older collectors, I don't mean that they're old in age, I mean like 100 years ago, all of the heirloom tomatoes, all of the hybrid tomatoes, those 2 and 3 kinds that came out originally from Peru and from Mexico, have been bred and bred and bred and bred. And you've seen those dogs that have been overbred. You know what happens. They get problems, they get diseases, they get troubles, they can't breathe. There's a lot of problems when you've bred the same genetics for too long. So what I am a super supporter of is all the new genetics. And that's why we're starting to see all those great new black tomatoes and yellow tomatoes and those little miniature tomatoes like the Tomasinas that are really, really super sweet, because they were able, this is the Berkeley University. Oh, I'm going to get in trouble here. I'm not going to say it. I'll bring that book on next week. I bought the whole book, and it talks all about the new collection, the new genetics. I want to bring something new into my garden. I want it to be disease resistant. So I am growing quite a few of the newer varieties, but I am still growing some of the old ones, the ones that are called open pollinated, like the sunrise bumblebee that we started with at the beginning of the hour. That's still one that I absolutely love. And it's one that there's no trouble at all. It's an open pollinated variety. It's not going to be one of the new ones, but it is still really interesting and really worth growing. So I am growing both hybrids and heirlooms, but the disease resistance is better on the new varieties, because, as I said, it's like having overbreeding. My dad was a cattle farmer, and he had a bull of one kind and cow. He never tried to do purebred Herefords. He tried, or Herefords, whatever you want to say. He had a Charolais bull and Hereford cows. So he was always looking for hybrid vigor. And I'm the same with tomatoes. I want to see something that's going to be mixed up, and that's maybe perhaps going to include the newer genetics, because I want to make sure that I'm not making any big mistakes when I'm growing in my greenhouse. And not that it's a mistake to grow heirlooms. I just know that they're a lot fussier. They get more virus, more fungal diseases, more trouble. And I'm not really a trouble gardener. I'm a kind of a no guff, no sweat gardener. So that works best for me. Do we have any other comments? Any other questions? Oh, Darlene's here. Hi, Darlene. Darlene says, talking about soil is beneficial to save eggshells and bring them to a powder and use them in the garden. Darlene's asking about soil, and maybe she saw my my comment about my eggshells. I went to Quebec City. This was a year ago, and I toured there the whole museum that they've got set up where they had the big fight on the lawn, and there was the British soldiers and the French soldiers. And in that museum, they had eggshells from the 1700s. Okay, I'm going to let that sink in. Eggshells collected on an archaeological site from the 1700s. And when I saw those little tiny eggshells, I said, oh, I'm not going to just throw my eggshells whole into my compost, because if they've had them there, sitting there on the plains of Abraham since the 1700s, we know they're not going to become available in your garden very quickly. So I agree with Darlene, who says that she saves her eggshells, but she brings them to a powder. So not to drop names, but I bought myself a Vitamix. So I let all of my eggshells dry up in a container under my sink, not in my compost, under my sink. And then when I've got a big container full, I put them in my Vitamix, put the lid up, powder them down. But again, I don't add them directly to my garden. I add them to my compost. And I do powder them and add them to my compost ever since I went to Quebec and I saw how long eggshells can live. And again, like coffee grinds or smoke ash, I don't want to add things directly to my soil because it won't be spread out evenly enough. By adding it to the compost, that calcium that's in the eggshells becomes available to all the microorganisms that are in the compost. And as you mix it up or as you empty it and turn it, you're getting all of that available. So I do powder them and add them to the compost. There we go. Done, Darlene. Okay, so I hope everybody else does it that way too. Bonnie, hi, Bonnie's here. Now, Bonnie, like me, was in Grand Prairie this weekend. She went there, so that was a surprise. Bonnie lives on Vancouver Island, went to Grand Prairie for my program, so that was appreciated. But she was actually there to see her mother. She says, hi, Donna, did you have any tree damage yet? No, but this is a really good question. Thanks for asking that, Bonnie. No tree damage, but if you have evergreens and you're getting unusual high snow, make sure to brush those trees. Make sure to brush extra snow off trees, because this isn't a heavy snow that we're having right now. But when you get those really wet, sudden snows, they can just damage the branches. Otherwise, just shake the tree good or brush it off, because it's not that heavy right now, but it could become heavy. And you don't want the branches to break, especially evergreens that are holding quite a bit. So I didn't get, did you have some damage yourself, Bonnie? I'd be curious to hear that, if you've had damage, because I certainly haven't. Oh, Darlene puts her tomato or her eggs in the bottom of a tomato hole. Benefit? I would say I like that idea, but I wouldn't do it. It's too hard to spread the calcium out and to make it available to the microbes. Unless the bottom of your tomato hole is where most of your microbes are, and who knows, most people have them, their microbes in the top 6 to 8 inches. And if you've got a big tomato, as you know, in the past, I've recommended people plant them deeper. You might be getting down into some less than perfect soil, some soil that doesn't have a lot of microbes. And we know our compost piles, if they're made well, are packed with microbes. So Darlene, just throw it right into your compost pile. If you do that, you know that it's going to be evenly mixed in. You know that the microbes, because it's not, calcium isn't directly available to your tomatoes. You might think it is, but it's not. It's directly available to the organisms, the biology that's in the soil, and then that makes it available to the tomato. So I stick by, I add eggshells only to my compost. Oops, I can't even type today. Sometimes I go through later and correct some of my typos or some of my spelling mistakes. But good questions. Good questions, everybody. That's really great. I see Janine's here, and she says, I still have kale in the garden. Better to leave the snow on it for insulation or brush it off. Well, it depends. If you've got really big husky kale, I've had some really husky kale in the past, and I've just left it all winter. And it can take down to -8, -10 now. Up in Campbell River, I heard they've had down to -15. But Janine, if it's standing, if it's looking good, you can maybe knock the plants and let some of of it fall off. You don't have to go out and individually brush each leaf off, but just knock it off if it's starting to get heavy, because I think that could be a problem otherwise. Oh, Bonnie's asked her son to sweep off her greenhouse. I can't believe the snow. It's warmed up in Grand Prairie slightly. So, Bonnie, I would say if your son can, just shake if you've got anything fragile. And by fragile, I mean evergreens that have been grafted. Because where they're grafted, there's always that weak part. So if you've got something that's been grafted, evergreen, definitely yes. But any of the deciduous plants, this is very light, fluffy snow that we're having. So don't worry about it. Your son will be just fine. So no problems. Well, look at this. It's already 3:30, and I do want to tell you that if you haven't already read, or if you're not already following Kristen, I'm trying to figure out how I can forward that to my page, Kristen. I've got it on Twitter, but otherwise read the Garden Diaries blog, or just pay attention to coffee. Don't put coffee directly onto your plants. If you're coming to CD Saturday in Victoria, I would love to see you there. I will be speaking about, what am I speaking about? Going undercover. That sounds like fun. And going undercover involves all the many ways that you can help your plants grow. You don't have to always put in a greenhouse, although, as you know, I have 2 greenhouses. But going undercover is about all the things that you can do that can help your plants grow and help them get established. So that's in Victoria this weekend at CD Saturday, all day Saturday, February 16th. Apparently parking gets really tight after 10 o'clock. So come on down to Victoria if you're in the neighborhood. What will I be speaking about? I will be speaking about going undercover and greenhouses. So if you want to know a little bit more about that, come on down and we'd love to see you. So that's our half hour. Thank you for joining me, and let me know what I can do for you next. Just send me your questions, and we'll keep this action live for another 15 minutes or so, just while we wind up all the questions, because people do keep asking questions after I'm offline. And meanwhile, have a great garden. And something I forgot to say on the weekend, and Dr. Dalen said to me, you didn't say your quote. I have a quote that I copied from JFK, John F. Kennedy, where he says, ask not what your country can grow for you. Actually, he says, ask not what your country can do for you. And I've changed it to, ask not what your community will grow for you. Ask what you can grow for your community. Have a great week. See you next week, and join me on Facebook. Join me on my webpage, donnabalzer.com. Sign up if you haven't yet, because you'll find that it's a lot of fun just to get the newsletters and to communicate back and forth. Bye for now.